Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, and we will be covering verses 67 to 79 today. And this is the account of Bani Israel, part 4. If we remember, we have covered 3 parts prior to this, where different aspects of Bani Israel are noted by the Quran. The case of human psyche behind the calf worship. Actually, calf worship over here, we could write it the ritualistic side of human proclivity towards worship. These are the references, and just like previous presentations as well on this topic, some excerpts are taken from this, The Meanings of the Quran, Volume 2, which is now published. And this is our contact in case there is a query or question regarding this presentation or any of our previous presentations. We go to first verse of today's talk, 67, dealing with the religious psyche. وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تَذْبَحُوا بَقَرَةً قَالُوا أَتَتَّخِذُونَا هُزُوًا قَالَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ أَنْ أَكُونَ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Then the state of your habit of making excuses had become such that when Allah commanded you to sacrifice a heifer, so here Quran is addressing Bani Israel, so that the sentiment of veneration in your hearts for calf worship, which you had created within yourselves by imitating the Qubti people, which is the people of Pharaoh, departs from your hearts. At first you tried to ridicule this command itself, even though you were aware that you had received this divine command via messenger, that is Musa, and it is not befitting to the status of a messenger that he should talk nonsense. Now some comments on this meaning. Efforts to help Bani Israel bring change to their ritualized psyche. As already noted, Bani Israel had lived among the Egyptians who were idol worshippers, and this had affected their collective psyche as well, just like the Muslims in India who became influenced by Hindu culture. However, being people of the book, they had somehow managed to keep their separate identity and so accepted the nubuwwat of the messenger Musa. So this thing we should keep in mind, that the Bani Israel, despite their long stay with the people of Pharaoh in Egypt, had kept their separate identity because they had become very religious and they were following their own rituals, but at the same time they were also influenced by Egyptian people. Collectively, they went through the tussle between Musa and Pharaoh, which spanned a period of time during which they should have picked up some salient features about the revelation from Allah. And this is another interesting comment, that once the messenger Musa came back and he became the messenger of Allah and started getting the revelation, he started to influence Bani Israel while they were in Egypt. Still, the effect was very slow and most of them were not willing to give up those rituals. After gaining their freedom and reaching the Sinai, they expressed some regrets about leaving Egypt when they had to face some of the hardships of life in the desert. We covered this aspect in our previous presentations. Part of the struggle was that they were not willing to give up their Batil beliefs. And we know that Batil beliefs are those which we do practice, but these never produce any constructive results. For example, the worship of a calf and many others. And we can see that all religions have some kind of ritualized practices, and these practices produce no positive results in the outer world. In this case, Musa confronted them after receiving wahi from Allah. The word used in the Quran for this is jahil. This means the human mind being devoid of knowledge, to have a belief which is in opposition to what is correct, and to do something contrary to how it should be done. So jahil means over here that they deliberately go against the facts of life, which have no practical benefits. They still wish to keep doing it. We go to the next verse, 68. Religious minds find hard to accept Iman. And this is a very important comment over here, that people who are into the business of religion and they think that this is the correct path they are following, once they come to the Quran, they find it extremely difficult, rather impossible to accept the Iman of the Quran. قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما هي قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة لا فارض ولا بكر أوان بين ذلك فافعلوا ما تؤمرون. An interesting thing over here is that in this verse, Rabbaka is used, that Bani Israel are addressing the messenger that you supplicate to your Rabb, not our Rabb, but your Rabb. When you were told that this is a command of Allah that is from Rabb and that its fulfillment is essential, you initiated superfluous arguments and began to say that ask Allah to state clearly what kind of heifer it should be. Because they like the heifer, they like that calf and they wanted to worship it and they were not willing to give it up. When you yourselves wanted those characteristics defined, you were informed that this heifer should neither be old nor young. Rather, it should be of middle age. Therefore, do not now procrastinate in the fulfillment of this command. Next slide is human beings seek excuses when they are not fully committed to a cause. And this is a great lesson for us on this platform, that we should look at the Quran and whatever permanent values we can follow, we should try our best to follow those even within the constraints of the man-made system. The interesting point is that Bani Israel did not refuse to obey the command, but realizing that this is about their desire for calf worship, they wished to delay the matter, thinking, and they complacently thought that this will go away, that the messenger may change his mind. And this is something very challenging for us on this platform as well, that if some clear message of the Quran instruction is before us, then we should stick to it and not wait that when the things will be suitable for us, only then we will follow. And over here, I have made a comment, note the pronoun your Rabb, not our. So Bani Israel were disclosing their own understanding to the messenger when they were telling him, ask your Rabb, not saying that ask our Rabb. So that means their psyche has not transformed yet. They had not accepted Iman of the revelation of Allah. We can compare this to the state of conviction of Muslims today who say that they believe in the Quran and Allah but are unwilling to commit to the path of Deen. And we can see the state of their development and their intellectual abilities. And they are far behind the secular minds in the world. Most do not find the courage to clearly state that they do not wish to come to the pure Quran. And this is a sort of hypocrisy, that if one is convinced of something, then one should say that and follow it. And if one is not convinced, then it is better that one should also state that I'm not convinced about the Quran and then leave it alone. This is because they do not look at the true reality of their life objectively, because they bring into it their own desires, their own emotions. They want the Quranic values to follow their desires. And when they find that the Quran is going against their desires, they, instead of saying and rejecting the Quran, they half-heartedly do not accept, but at the same time, they are not willing to say that. I.e., they do not consider the consequences of their path. And this kind of dichotomy, this kind of dualism affects human psyche, and one does not get best from their life. Here the Quran has stated that people need to take the guidance of Allah extremely seriously. And this is important, that one should pause, reflect, and say that this is the only life I have, and the day gone is gone forever. A week gone is week forever. So one is getting closer to the position of departure or the point of departure from this world. So we have to create that kind of a seriousness within us, not take the things lightly, because we are not coming back to this life. This is a one-way street. Because if they do not, then people like Pharaoh will acquire power and turn the face of the earth into hell, just like the word of 2026. So this is another important point which comes out of it, that Quran is presenting a system of deen before us. And if we are not committed to this system at an individual level and then at a collective level, then essentially we are making way for evil to prevail in the world. And this is the state of the world at present, because there is no deen anywhere in any part of the world. Next point is, another point of interest is that people need to be confronted with their Batil beliefs so that their true self becomes exposed. The messenger Musa understood it. Anyone with the light of the revelation, for example, today, anyone with the light of the Quran can understand why people are not coming towards the Quran. This is the requirement of the functioning of the law of requital, and the messenger Musa did not give up. He kept reminding them, and this is what we should do as well. Musa followed the guidance of Wahi and unhesitatingly asked them to sacrifice the heifer and kept clarifying all their queries. Momineen should never be shy of talking about the Quran, because if the conviction has taken place within our heart and mind, then we should be passing on to others, and knowingly that this life is a one-way street. None of us is going to come back. And if we do not pass on the message, then how our self is going to develop? We are not going to develop ourselves unless we pass on the message and share with others and display our own firm conviction in this message. Next verse is 69, displaying patience and understanding. قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما لونها قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة صفراء فاقع لونها تسر الناظرين. You replied that, no, the matter is still not clear. So Bani Israel is still not convinced. Ask your Rabb, not our Rabb, to tell us what should be its color. Now they want to know a bit more about that heifer which Allah is asking them to sacrifice. It was stated that it should be a deep yellow-colored heifer which should appear attractive in the eyes of the beholders. And it has to appear attractive in the eyes of the beholders, because no worshipper will call his own god or deity ugly or not looking nice. Next is, people on the path of Al-Haq should persist with their inquiry. From these verses, we can see how firmly entrenched people remain in their false beliefs, because they are the beneficiaries of those false beliefs. They collectively follow it. It is seldom single person will follow false beliefs. They come together, and as a result of being together, they benefit from all this false outlook. And what happens is that society then stays in a state of Jahim. And to what lengths they are willing to go to resist any challenging of these Batil paths of life. Here, Bani Israel are facing the challenging from the messenger Musa, who is very persistent and resolute in resolving this issue, because he is steadfast in his mission. Because if we remember, we have seen some part of the messenger Musa's life, that he was very patient, very steadfast, and very resolute. That is why he went over to Pharaoh and stood up against him. And standing up against a Batil system, even in terms of words, is not easy. But he had full conviction, and we have gone through some aspects of it previously as well. However, the messenger is taking them through their various steps of questioning. And this is part of evolution, that we have to pass on the message gradually to others, while we also enhance our own understanding of the system of Deen, to lead them towards making the decisions eventually to slaughter the heifer. It is unclear how long this whole process lasted, possibly a few days or even weeks. And we can think about it that it must have taken a while for these verses to appear or to be revealed to the messenger Musa, and then he is asking them that this is what you are supposed to do to obey the command of Allah. Because this particular heifer was used for worship, hence it was healthy and attractive. In any case, objects of worship become alluring in the eyes of those who worship such deities. And we can see that in different religions, people do a lot of decoration and add lot of glitter and brightness to their deities. For example, we can see these things in churches, in mosques, in synagogues, in temples. Emotive biases cloud human rational thinking, and this is commonplace in the sphere of ritualistic religious practices. When it comes to religion, even highly educated people, for example, scientists, etc., hold on to all kinds of irrational beliefs in the world. This is true in the domain of all religions, and we see that quite prevalent under sectarian Islam as well. We go to the next verse, verse 70, not rejecting but not accepting as well. قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما هي إن البقرة تشابه علينا وإنا إن شاء الله لمهتدون. Even after this you did not agree to act, and for the sake of further argument said that the matter is still a bit doubtful, because describe it a bit more clearly by asking your Rabb. And again they said, your Rabb, not our Rabb, so that we can reach the correct conclusion and so that we act exactly in accordance with whatever is the will of Allah. And this is another very interesting verse in which inshallah is also used. And we see within the sectarian Islam how many times people use this term and then they never act on it. They leave it to Allah. Accepting obedience under compulsion. This delays Deen as a system. And this is another very serious aspect of these verses, that when people do not want to obey the commands of Allah and are half-hearted and not fully committed to this path, as a result, the evil prospers in the world. As a result, the system of Deen, which could have been easily established, is not established. In fact, the total path of such people is wrong, and wrong path can never take us to our right destination. قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة لا ذلول تثير الأرض ولا تسقي الحرث مسلمات لا شياة فيها قالوا الآن جئت بالحق فذبحوها وما كادوا يفعلون. So then they finally agreed to slaughter it, to sacrifice it. It was stated that such a heifer which has not been used for plowing nor has been used at a well, unblemished and healthy from every aspect. They replied that, yes, now you have informed us correctly. And we can see that they knew exactly which heifer Allah is talking about, because they were not using it for growing, for plowing their fields as well, because it was a sacred deity of theirs. So in even such a small matter, you made so many excuses. You did not do all this because the matter was not originally clear to you. You knew right from the start that we wish to have a heifer, that is deity, sacrificed through your hands, because you had made it into a god. So that is why Quran says, La ilaha illallah. That is, first you should get rid of all ilahs which are residing or finding an abode in your mind. And then you come to Allah, and then you will see that how the Quran will make sense to you. And we wish that this sentiment of veneration should leave your heart. And this is the whole thing, because these people have an emotive attachment with their deities, with the objects of your worship, with the objects of their worship. But you did not wish to sacrifice it. Devotion for it had become embedded in the depths of your heart. But you did not wish to confess this either. That is why you began to make excuses. And after so many prolonged clarifications, you fulfilled the command, because they couldn't help it. The messenger Musa and of course his brother both were very insistent on that, because they knew that the condition in which Bani Israel were living, unless they go against their previous false belief systems, they cannot get out of it. Because if the psyche does not change, our outer world is never ever going to change. Remember, in the obedience of commands, you should not keep probing about those matters which Allah has not stated Himself. And the Quran has very clearly stated that don't go outside the Quran if you want to be successful in this life and, of course, the life of the hereafter. The verse 72, another incident, the case of a murder. Now the Quran goes to another incident which took place among Bani Israel. وَإِذْ قَتَلْتُمْ نَفْسًا فَادَّرَأْتُمْ فِيهَا وَاللَّهُ مُخْرِجٌ مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. On the one hand, your condition is such that there is so much argument and discussion on the sacrifice of one animal. And on the other hand, this condition that you took a human life unjustly, you killed him secretly. So they killed somebody and was not known that who did it, and the person who did it was not ready to confess it. So on one side, they are very serious about their deity, a heifer, and to sacrifice it. But on the other side, they were also carrying out mutual murders and mutual killings. And this is very normal within this religious type of settings, that people lose the balance. And when an investigation was launched, you heard accusations at each other. In other words, you did not even have enough moral courage that since the crime has been committed, to confess to it openly. And this is what happens, that when people's minds are not focused on their destination and they are not very clear about the purpose of their life, there remains differences among them. And whenever there's a trouble, they start accusing each other. The Quran wants to take us away from that and asks us to develop that character within the value system of the Quran so that you see the things very objectively. But Allah wished to reveal that matter which you wish to conceal so that the crime does not remain unpunished. Next verse 73. This verse holds the key to understanding the importance of the human accountability. فَقُلْنَا اضْرِبُوهُ بِبَعْضِهَا كَذَلِكَ يُحْيِي اللَّهُ الْمَوْتَى وَيُرِيكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Now, for understanding other details concerning these two verses, that is 72 and 73, I will recommend that we should go through the details given in volume 2, which is now published. The state of the human psyche in mushrik superstitions in which you are entrenched is such that if he has to face some unusual situation, he begins to be overcome by trembling. And this is part of human faulty psyche, because when human beings have too many false beliefs in their mind, they lose that objectivity, they lose that ability to make good decisions. Since Allah was aware of this psychological state of yours, that is why He communicated a psychological tactic to find a clue to the killer, which was very uncommon for the mental level of human beings of that era. He instructed that call all these people whom you suspect one by one and tell them to touch some part of the corpse, that is the deceased. Therefore, when the one who was the criminal approached the corpse, due to fright, those signs manifested in him which were sufficient to prove his crime. We know that in some part of investigations, particularly in the West, the lie test is also used for this purpose. In this way, Allah unveiled the secret of this murder, and by taking qasas, that is retribution from the criminal, converted those deadly effects which were looming over the nation into life. Because if a murder remains uninvestigated, undetermined, and the culprit or the criminal is not found, then uncertainty and fear prevails in that society, and people start thinking that over here we can do anything and get away with it. The reality is that the secret of the life of a nation lies in retributive justice, that is to follow the law of requital. In this way, Allah keeps showing you His signs so that by using your intellect and reasoning, you can resolve such matters. So there are two important parts of this verse, كَذَلِكَ يُحْيِي اللَّهُ الْمَوْتَى, that by investigating and finding out who is murdering, who is killing whom, the life of that society depends on that. Otherwise, that society will become dead, in which nothing gets investigated. And Quran over here sums up لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, so that you use your rational mind. You go deep into these things and do not let things go unnoticed. In this way, Allah keeps showing you His signs so that by using your intellect and reasoning, you can resolve such matters. and understand this fact, how the condition of nations themselves changes through a psychological transformation, and this happens by moving forward from individual level to the collective level. So that means there should be a very effective educational system in place where people right from the beginning, that is, children are trained and educated and are given that self-development. Now we go to some comments on these two verses, 72 and 73, comparing these meanings with the commonplace translations. And it is very interesting that translations have turned it into something different. And if we go through this part of the discussion in volume 2, we will find that there is a lot of important information contained over there. First, let us go to the translation of the first verse, 72. Remember, you slew a man and fell into a dispute among yourself as to the crime, but Allah was to bring forth what you did hide. And when Quran says that Allah was going to bring forth, that means human beings acting on behalf of Allah should do it. It is not that Allah directly is going to come and investigate it. The whole point is, Quran is saying, do not let it go uninvestigated. Second verse, 73. So we said, strike the body with a piece of the heifer. Now see, these things are not, heifer is not there in that verse. It is just strike is there with a piece. Thus Allah brings the dead to life and shows you his signs, perchance you may understand. These translations and expositions have tried to link the two incidents, i.e. the sacrificing of the heifer and the investigation of this murder. Whereas Quran is not saying that. This incident of murder could be quite different from the sacrificing heifer as well. And in any case, if we use our intellect, these are two separate events. The Quran has not linked these together. For more details, see volume 2, and there is quite a lot covered in volume 2 on this aspect. In verse 73, there is no mention of the heifer, and the translation suggesting that somehow by striking the deceased man with a part of a dead, that is slaughtered heifer, it will become alive. And it doesn't make sense. We can't apply it in today's world and relate the whole account of his own murder. And what these expositions are saying is that somehow by striking the body of the dead man with this bone or some part of the heifer, he became alive again and then started talking and saying that so-and-so had killed me, and then he became dead again. Goes against the physical law of Allah. So then what is there for us to learn from this so-called miracle? Then the Quran states, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, emphasizing the use of intellect and reasoning. This appears after Quran says, كَذَلِكَ يُحْيِي اللَّهُ الْمَوْتَى, that this is how Allah gives life to the dead. Which means that if a nation is dead, if the incident is such that which has not been investigated, once it is investigated and criminal is found out, that is something which will give life to that society, because the society will know that everything over here will be investigated. And this is covered under verse 256, where Quran says that dead are given life. Regarding giving life to the dead, the Quran has stated that, and there is another verse which supports this interpretation, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاتٌ يَا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. In retributive justice, which is qisas, there is life for you, appealing to the human rational mind and by urging to become muttaqi. The hikmat is explained. So Quran has already explained this thing in other verses. That is why cross-referencing or tasriful ayat is very important to understand the Quranic system of deen. Now let us go to the next verse, 74. The path of Batil hardens human hearts. And this is another extremely important aspect of human psychology, that when people follow wrong paths, Batil paths, what happens to their psyche. Summa kasat qulubukum min ba'di zalika fahiya kal hijarate aw ashaddu kaswatan wa inna min al hijarate lama yatafajjaru minhul anharu وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَشَقَّقُ فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءُ وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَهْبِطُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. Nonetheless, all this kept happening to you, and you kept degenerating and reforming. Ultimately, you turned your faces away completely from the divine code, and as a consequence, your hearts became hard like stones, even harder than this. So, Quran is now narrating the subsequent part of their psyche, Bani Israel, because they are being addressed during the era of the revelation of the Quran. This is because there are even some stones from which streams gush, and some are such that they burst, and from inside them springs at least flow out, if not streams. And there are also such stones which, when confronted by the divine laws, abandon their hardness and descend from their status, i.e., becoming soft. So, Quran is using a parable of rock and stones over here, that your hearts became so hard that you had no compassion left within you. So soft that they can be easily ground into powder, and some can even be melted. But your hearts are such that they neither soften in compassion for humanity, nor do they bow down before the divine laws, nor do they fall as tears from your eyes. And we can see the example of that across the Muslim world as well as among the Bani Israel of today. But it is only your own selves that are harmed from this. No act of yours is hidden from the gaze of our law of requital. Every single one of them will surely establish its outcome. And then Quran says, O Jamaat Momineen, make sure that you do not ever become like them. And that is an important lesson from this, that we should not let our hearts become solid, concrete, because the Quran says that that means your psyche is or not of being a moment. Now, verse 74, the evil side of the human psyche. Here the Quran has drawn our attention to an important aspect of the human psyche, i.e., what happens cognitively to human beings when they insist on doing wrong in the world. They think they are getting away by pursuing their unbridled desires, and the man-made systems also facilitate this path by providing material successes. And that is why Quran says, Ta'muruna bil ma'rufi wa nahyan al munkar, that tell people that what is right and what is wrong, because forbidding from evil, we try to block the evil. It does not spread then. We witness it all around us on planet Earth under every man-devised system. The Quran here helps Momineen by pointing to various signs of the psyche of these people who have transgressed all bounds. We have just witnessed the genocide taking place in Gaza. The present generation of Bani Israel have manifested every conceivable tyranny, injustice, and cruelty which humanity could possibly witness. All this has also been witnessed by the people of the book of today's era, that is the Muslims. These all Muslims, sectarian Muslims, are also people of the book, because they have given up the Quran, and they are the ones who are allowing all these Batil things happening in the world, because they are too much lost in their ritualized versions of sectarian Islam. Did they counter it? No, why not? So are all the people of the book complicit. So all of them are complicit. And this is something where we should be very clear on this platform, that what Quran is asking us to transform within our own psyche. We must acquire 100% conviction of what is in the Quran in relation to the system of Deen. The Quran has warned about this kind of behavior very clearly, and this is something which we should go through few times in our own time, the verses before and after it as well. Alam yani lillazina amanu an taksha qulubuhum li zikrillahi wa ma nazala min al-haqqi wa la yakunu kallazina utul kitaba min qablu fatala alayhimul amadu fakasat qulubuhum wa kasirum minhum fasikin. The same words fakasat have been is used over here as well. That is the hardening of the heart. Has not the time arrived for Momineen that their hearts in all humility engage in the zikr of Allah? So this transformation was taking place in that state of Medina as well at that time, because people had converted into Islam and accepted Iman and were now moving forward under the leadership of the Messenger of Allah, which has been revealed, and they should not become like those to whom was given the book aforetime. So the Quran is very strongly warning Muslims. But long ages passed over them and their hearts grew hard. And we can see how hard their hearts are in today's life and what is happening with Palestinian Muslims, and they are doing nothing. For many among them are rebellious transgressors, fasiqeen. So we should not give them any iota of doubt if we use the Quranic light. Illustrating by using a simile. What the condition of the human heart becomes through continuous transgression and obstinacy, haughtiness and pride, the Quran has compared this in its entirety with a stone, kal hijara, and Quran says not stone but like a stone. It is the same metaphorical style which has been adopted in verse 59:21 of Surah Al-Hashr, where it is stated, "Had we sent down this Quran on a mountain, verily you would have seen it humble itself and cleave asunder for fear of Allah. Such are the similitudes which we propound to men that they may reflect." And when we go through the Quran as a moment and accept Iman, we also develop that kind of a feeling where Quran helps to soften our hearts, soften our minds, and we realize that we have to be part of Jamaat Momineen. We have to come together and unite our hearts. And those hearts will only unite when they have what is given in the Quran. The state of the effects of this Quran is such that if, for example, we had placed it in the heart of a mountain and bestowed awareness to it, you would have seen that it would have begun to quake at the awareness of disobeying it. Its heart would have split open at the thought of the responsibilities. We explain these kinds of examples so that people can use their intellect and reasoning and ponder on what splendors this Quran is the possessor of and what the consequences are of going against it. And this is what we are doing on this platform, to find out the finest effects, the profound effects it can have on human psyche, so that such psyches, such minds then come together and work as companions of Allah. Verse 75, guidance provided on not attaching false hope. أَفَتَطْمَعُونَ أَنْ يُؤْمِنُوا لَكُمْ وَقَدْ كَانَ فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ يَسْمَعُونَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ يُحَرِّفُونَهُ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا عَقَلُوهُ وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ. O Jamaat, who is giving an invitation to the Quranic revolution, we know that you wish from your hearts that the Jews should also support you in this revolution. And in this way, they themselves can achieve freedom from this life of humiliation and disgrace, and so that humanity is also liberated from their intrigues. And this is what Tolu Islam is doing. We go out and tell others as well that we have benefited from this, and you also benefit from it, and all the misery and fear and grief in which the world is, we can change it by using the law of Allah. But do you think that this kind of nation, whose psychological condition has become that which has been mentioned earlier, can ever support you? Because if they have hardened their hearts and they are not willing to give up their Batil beliefs, then Haqq cannot find its way in their heads. Especially when their condition is such that they do not do all this from a lack of knowledge. There is a group of religious leaders among them who listen to the divine laws, understand them, and then deliberately make changes and alterations in them, and resort to such interpretations of them from which the matter becomes something quite different. The remainder of the people just keep following them. How can there be an expectation from those people who deliberately do all this that they will accept Haqq? Haqq can never get into a mind where there are false beliefs. It's that simple. Some comments on this verse 75, another aspect of the human psyche. Here our attention is drawn to another important aspect which provides guidance on this path towards the system of Deen. This is what happened after the initial era of Islam, when following in the footsteps of the people of the book of that era, the Muslims contaminated the Quranic guidance by inventing the books of ahadith and included every kind of transgression to circumvent the teachings of the book of Allah, because they stopped liking the book of Allah. They stopped using it as a system, as a constitution, and went over to those sources which were man created. Human unbridled desires and emotions are very strong, and people violate all decent limits of being human in order to fulfill their own aims. And we can see that happening in the world. We see this being displayed across the world by so-called leaders in every nation state. This situation is still continuing, and despite possessing the pure and preserved book of Allah, Muslims are not getting any benefit from its guidance. And on this platform, we have gone through some of the finest aspects of these verses, and we have seen that how these affect human psyche. And Quran is asking us to change this psyche so that we take these additional responsibilities which Allah has taken himself and become his partner, and then see how things develop and evolve over a period of time in our favor. Instead, wider humanity is suffering at the hands of more powerful people holding unbridled powers. They are not willing to direct their intellect and reasoning towards solving human problems. Rhetorically, many mention it in their speeches, but not much gets done because words come cheap. It is very easy to talk. We can see endlessly people talk on media, and these resolve no issue. They use it to look good in the eyes of the people. They also talk about eradicating poverty, and what all they do is keep accumulating wealth in few hands in the world. This stagnation is glaringly obvious, and despite possessing the same minds and latent potentials, they appear quite happy and contented with blind obedience to those who are more powerful. And who can be more powerful than Allah of the Quran? And this is where we need to focus our attention, that this book is from someone who is infinitely powerful, who has created everything in the world, and who has made sure that each one of us is going to die at some point in our finite life. And that is where we have to concentrate, not out of fear, but using our rational mind. Verse 76, signs of people resorting to aimless arguments. وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا وَإِذَا خَلَا بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ قَالُوا أَتُحَدِّثُونَهُم بِمَا فَتَحَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمْ لِيُحَجُّوكُم بِهِ عِندَ رَبِّكُمْ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. And we can see how frequently Quran says أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, or use your intellect. You consider them to be honest, even though their condition is such that when they come to you, they present themselves as being honest, because it is very easy to bring any big words on our lips. It costs nothing because they think they will get away with it. And when they meet each other alone, they say it is good to keep intermingling with this Jamaat, but we should take care not to mention those parts of our books to them which they may bring up against us as divine evidence, and shut our mouths. This matter should be well understood. And we see this as well, that when someone quotes from books of ahadith and we present the Quran, they keep quiet and then they move away without even reflecting on it. Next slide is some signs of the people who do not commit to the cause. When these people come to your meetings or meet you, they say that we too have accepted Iman. Reference to this practice of the hypocrites has been covered under verse 214 in volume 1. And we know volume 1 is also published, where it has been said about them that they behave like this in order to deceive Allah and the Jamaat-e Momineen. One point over here, that if we can afford, particularly all those members who are in the West and those in Pakistan, they can use the Urdu translations, that is Matalib al-Furqan. But it is worth buying these volumes, because when we take any step on this path of Allah, then it helps to develop ourselves. And then in these volumes, the discussion is far more comprehensive, and a lot of details are given through which we learn. Here it is stated that when these people rise and leave your meeting and go to their religious leaders, the leaders say to them that we hope you did not disclose to the Muslims those matters that are written in our books, from which it becomes proven that their messenger is on haqq, and in this way, by presenting these references against you, they can defeat you. See how superfluous the whole thing is. They are not realizing that this life is very important, and each passing day means that we are getting closer to our death. They, that is their ringleaders, used to instruct them that when you go there, remain watchful and take care that such a matter does not come to your lips even in error. So Quran says that they have disease in their hearts and they harm their own selves. During the time of the revelation of the Quran, the state of the alleged heavenly books of the Jews was that firstly, these were in the Hebrew language, with which non-Jews were generally unfamiliar. Hence, they did not know what is written in these books. Then their religious leaders also used to usually keep these books hidden from others, non-Jews. And we hear these kind of things as well among sectarian Islam as well, where people sometimes say that only scholars can understand the Quran. And when you confront them that if scholars were meant to understand the Quran, why do you write tafsir and you write translations? What is the point of that then? Religious leaders exploit the general public, continuing on verse 76. Alteration and adulteration had taken place in these books to a very great extent. And despite this, such things were present in them which referred to a messenger who was to come, and Rasulullah fully met those criteria which were mentioned about him. The rabbis and elders used to emphasize to those people of theirs who used to attend the meetings of the Muslims that make sure you do not let it slip that there is reference in our books to a messenger to come, and that these are the characteristics described about him. And I have experienced myself as well that when attending conventions of Tolu Islam in Lahore, I've seen people from other religious party also coming over there and asking few questions and then leave without changing their own beliefs. They come over there just to find out what these people are saying, and then without taking any positive side, they just leave. And they do harm to themselves. If you do this, then by presenting your own evidences against you, they will prove that the messenger to come is this very messenger, Rasulullah. Then you will have nothing to say in return, so be very vigilant in this respect. And we can understand that at that time, the messenger must be explaining the Quran in detail, appealing to human intellect and emotions. This is exactly what happens in the world of religion. The religious leaders shield their teaching as being consecrated scripture so that their monopoly is maintained over it and no one else can access it. Because they are the beneficiary of it, they use the religious belief system as a business to earn their living. They even hide the true teaching from their own people. Have you not noticed that among us too, what great care is taken so that the pure Quran does not appear before the Muslims? Because due to this, the very existence of the religious leaders comes to an end. The scholars and elders of these people of the book used to undertake these kinds of precautions, but these ploys of theirs were refuted by stating that, and we go to the next verse, 77. To know what people hide. Avala yalamuna annallaha yalamu ma yusirruna wa ma yulinun. And the next verse is وَمِنْهُمْ أُمِّيُّونَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا مَنِيَّ وَإِنْهُمْ إِلَّا يَظُنُّونَ. But they do not even reflect that the Allah from whom they received those matters, they wish to hide those very matters from that same Allah. Because all these exposures which they hide take place through the hands of Jamaat-e Momineen. Ask them, can these matters remain hidden from Allah? He knows full well what these people disclose and what they keep hidden. And we can see that to what extent Quran is telling us and convincing us that you follow this path and you will never be deceived by these people who do not wish to follow the Quran. These people not only engage in this kind of trickery with others, they keep doing all this with their own people as well. For example, some people among them are such who are not literate. They hold fast to the false desires created by their complacent beliefs and remain intoxicated in superstitions and conjectures. And this is the state of the Muslim world. And whatever they wish to ask about Shariat, for this they turn to their leaders and rabbis, scholars and elders. And this Shariat of theirs is a stagnant pond in which only, should I say, smell and problems will become created and multiplied. The Quran provides universal criteria to evaluate the contents of other religious books. Observe their folly that they wish to keep the correct teaching of their books concealed from that Allah who had revealed these books. I've taken this excerpt from volume 2, The Meanings of the Quran. Based on this eternal knowledge of His, Allah has included the true teaching of the former books in the Quran. As far as these efforts of theirs were concerned, that Muslims should not be able to understand their books, these also failed. As has been stated earlier, their books were in the Hebrew language. History informs us that Rasulullah told Zayd that he should learn the Hebrew language, so within 7 to 10 days he gained sufficient expertise in it from which he was able to understand the books of the Jews. We can see from here that in the earlier era of Islam, to what extent Muslims went to explore every possibility to know about other religions as well. The reality is that according to their origin and basis, the Arabic and Hebrew languages are actually one. In fact, the mother of the Hebrew language is also the Arabic language. That is why the individual who is proficient in the Arabic language will not have much difficulty in understanding and learning the Hebrew language. And Allama Pervez has made it very convenient for us that he has virtually written on every aspect of the system of Deen and preserved in his books. And now many of his books are also translated in English. This was probably the reason why this is narrated in history. Before accepting Islam, Caliph Umar used to spare some time to attend the assemblies of the scholars of the Jewish people when he used to go to other countries. So they were all desperate to gain more knowledge. It becomes clear from this that he understood their language. In any case, despite the efforts of the Jewish scholars, nothing in their books could have remained hidden from the Muslims. And Quran has said that if you make effort on our path, that is the path of Allah, then the paths, further paths will keep becoming open before you. We go to the next, 78, the importance of understanding the Quran. The intrigue of those religious leaders that the teaching of the book is to be kept hidden from the eyes of the public, and this is happening under the sectarian Islam as well, that the religious leaders are making sure that general public remains firmly on these so-called 5 pillars of Islam. They become successful in this because the public is uneducated, and Quran calls them ummi, and their only attachment to the book is veneration. They wrap it in silk covers and store it in high places in their homes. On opening it, they kiss it and touch their eyes with it. They do not turn their back to it. By running their finger along its lines and words, they assume that they have earned swab. And swab is some kind of an abstract reward which is meant to be gained in the next life. As far as this life is concerned, this life is meant to be lived like in hell. In this way, the book of Allah becomes reduced to mean nothing more than a source for these kinds of deceptive assumptions and embellished desires of theirs. Or there are some among them who just keep repeating the words of the book without knowing what the meanings and interpretations of these words are. And we have seen on this platform that how powerful and profound the message is hidden in every verse of the Quran. They read the words of the book without understanding its language. They merely recite it. They memorize it. Beyond this, they have no knowledge about the book. And who suffers? They themselves are suffering individually as well as collectively. It is obvious that when this is the condition of the nation, they will believe whatever their religious leaders tell them as being the teaching of the book. We go to the last verse of today's presentation, 79, authoring books of Batil and then attributing these to Allah. And this is the state of today's sectarian Islam. فَوَيْلٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَكْتُبُونَ الْكِتَابَ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ ثُمَّ يَقُولُونَ هَذَا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ لِيَشْتَرُوا بِهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا فَوَيْلٌ لَهُمْ مِمَّا كَتَبَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَوَيْلٌ لَهُمْ مِمَّا يَكْسِبُونَ. I've highlighted some of these aspects. What their scholars do is that they invent the instructions of Shariat themselves using their own minds and in accordance with their own wishes, and tell these illiterate people that these are all divine commands, and in this way keep taking an unrightful advantage of them. Because ignorant man who is living in darkness, anyone can misguide him. It's very easy. As they say that in a land of blind, one man is a king. These people do not grasp even this much, that this self-invented Shariat of theirs and the wealth earned through this is all of it a cause of destruction and ruin. It is worth looking at the root of Shariat in Lugatul Quran, because this root means a path which is open and clear and flowing water. It is not a stagnant pond, just like the sectarian Islam's belief system. We go to the last slide, verse 79, using religion for paltry benefits. These religious leaders keep writing whatever they wish from their own site and present it to the public as divine Shariat. The aim from this is solely to earn a living. It is the decree of Allah that these concocted fatwas of theirs are a cause for their own destruction, and whatever they earn through this is also a cause for their ruin. The concocting Shariat and selling of Deen is the biggest reason for destruction and ruin. Because this changes the human psyche. If the human psyche is so backward and so stagnant and in a state of Jahim, that it thinks that what has happened in the past, we should keep following it, that is taqleed, then nothing will change in the outer world. And all those secular minds then take advantage of such darkened, should I say, religious minds. Allah has declared about those who falsify the Quran, from which it is obvious that this means our own ulama who sell Deen, that is there such a message that you slip away from it yourself and also do this to others, and you falsify it so that you can earn a living. So whole thing is economic. That is the benefits of this life. You have made falsifying Deen as your profession. The fact is that whenever Deen becomes the means by which to earn a living, then a human being has to do all this. So this is the system. So that is why Quran says change the system so such people are not produced in the first place. Such people have their own living and they take pride in earning their own living rather than exploiting other human beings. In this, no leaders of any religion are exempt from this. Then the condition of these religious leaders is such that they themselves suffer from this kind of complacency, and also say to other people that, and they say, the fire shall not touch us but for a few numbered days. Say, have you taken a promise from Allah? For He never breaks His promise. Or is it that you say of Allah what you do not know? So in order to know Haqq, we have to come to the Quran. If we don't come to the Quran, then we are bound to live a life of Batil. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.